Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and today, it is Friday, we need to cover all of the final team news and key questions ahead of Game Week 14. Guys, do not get your injury news from coloured triangles on the FPL website because we're going to explain all in this video. And if you do enjoy this one, do drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get started. Okay, so first of all, let's whiz through these press conferences, guys, because there's a lot of news that really may impact our FPL team. So first of all, starting off in Arsenal, alphabetical order, White is available. There's no fitness issues there, but it does seem like Tomiyasu is set to keep his place. It seems to be Tomiyasu's place to lose in this Arsenal defence right now, which is unfortunately pretty bad news for Ben White. Maybe a player that we might want to look at selling because I don't think he's guaranteed starts anymore. Raya is obviously now eligible to play. Last week he couldn't play because he was against his parent club, Brentford, but I would probably suspect that Raya is pretty much nailed on for the rest of the season now, other than the other Brentford game that Arsenal have to play. For Aston Villa, now this is the big new one. Now Watkins, obviously he was not in the squad on Thursday. And it's basically a situation where he felt a little bit of pain on Wednesday in training. Emery was not completely happy, decided to rest him. And the latest news is that he's going to have a late fitness test. And it's going to be kind of 50-50 whether he's going to be available or not. He's not unavailable per se, but I think it's more of a case of whether Aston Villa are willing to take a risk on playing Watkins in this Bournemouth game, particularly with, you know, a midweek game and then another game in the Premier League after that as well against Man City and Arsenal. Could we actually see Watkins rested? What my personal opinion on this one is that Watkins is not going to be able to play the full 90 minutes. So I do think he is at risk of being substituted on if he is on the bench and maybe even get a 1-pointer there. So it's a really interesting one. I'm not totally convinced at this moment that Watkins will be available. I think it is a bit touch and go. I don't think he's going to be out for the long term or anything like that, but given that Bournemouth is the game he might miss, and after that we do have some tough fixtures, it might be a reason to think about removing Watkins from your team, particularly if you can do it on a free transfer. Now, outside of that, Zaniolo is back and available, and Kamara is suspended. I'm sure that's not nearly as interesting as the Watkins news, so we will circle back to that later on in the video and have a look at some replacements if you do feel like going that way. So, right, Bournemouth up next. Aarons, Adams, Fredericks, and Scott, they're still out. Kelly is also out. Macondes, however, is nearing fitness, so we could see a return for him pretty soon. For Brentford, Collins, he's going to be out for weeks, so the centre-back is going to be out for a little while longer. Jensen and Rorslev are back for Brentford, and Damsgaard is also available. So a couple of returnees for Brentford. For Brighton, we didn't actually have a press conference for this weekend for the Premier League games, but we do have a little bit of information based on their European football. So Mitoma, he is back. He is available. He will be playing, most likely. Milner and Igor have also returned to Brighton, so some nice returnees there. And Dunk, Estupinian, Fati, and Lamptey, we have to presume that they are still out. We don't know for sure. We haven't had press conferences, but they haven't been spotted in training, and there's been no update on them. So I think we have to assume that those guys are still going to be out. For Burnley, Ekdal is available again, finally. Benson, he is building match fitness, so we could see a return for him soon. And Foster is still out. No return date for him. For Chelsea, reasonably good news, as Nkunku and Lavia are close, and Nkunku in particular could even make the match day squad this weekend against Brighton. So, yeah, Nkunku, we could be seeing him a little bit sooner than expected. Gusto is doubtful. He's got a knee injury at the moment, so we're not sure if he's going to be available. With James and Cucurella suspended, that's going to be meaning that maybe Chelsea are going to be a little bit light on those fullback positions because not too many players available there. Obviously, no Chilwell as well. Wonder who's going to be playing in those positions. We could see some centre-backs playing slightly out of position. Maybe Colwill on the left back. Could see Disasi on the right back, maybe. Something like that. For Crystal Palace, Eze is out. Not sure on his return date, but it's going to be a few weeks at minimum. Decore, he could be out for the whole season, and Holding, he's expected to be out for a month as well. So bad news for Crystal Palace. They have definitely got some new players missing for this game week and beyond, particularly as their fixtures start to get a little bit worse. You do have to worry about Crystal Palace a little bit moving forward. For Everton, Calvert-Lewin, he is a doubt because he has missed some training this week with muscle tightness. So, yeah, I'm unsure about him. Onana is unlikely to be available as well, but Beto is available. So we could see Beto come into that Everton squad. For Fulham, Pellegrini, he is going to be back after suspension, so that'll be a real nice boost for Fulham. We know how important he is for them to allow them to keep more clean sheets and be more defensively solid. Diop, Francois, Muniz, and Traore, they are all still out, so no movement there. For Liverpool, we know Alisson, he's going to miss at least 2 weeks with injury, and 2 weeks in real life terms, in terms of game weeks for us FPL guys, that could be 3, maybe even 4 game weeks. So Kelleher is expected to start. He's a 3.9 million goalkeeper, and you may be able to pick him up to cover Alisson for the next 3 or 4 game weeks. Not a bad run for Liverpool either during that time. Diogo Jota, he's also going to be out for several weeks, which I think does improve the prospects of the likes of Luis Diaz and Darwin Nunez for them to get a little bit more game time over this Christmas period. Luton, Kabore, he is back after a head injury, so they'll be glad to have him back. Nakamba is doubtful, and Sambi Lokonga is back in training, but again, not totally sure if he is going to be available this game week for Luton. For Man City, Kovacic is back in full training. Stones is available, but Pep Guardiola not completely sure if he's going to be ready to start the game or not. Probably going to see him in the matchday squad at minimum, though. Nunez is, however, still out. For Manchester United, Højlund and Antony, they have returned. They are back and ready to go. Mason Mount is also in training, but he's not guaranteed a start quite yet either. And there's no other returnees. We know United do have quite a few players out at the moment. For Newcastle, speaking of teams that have quite a few players out, Botman apparently is doing very well in individual training. So I think there is positive news for Botman moving forward. Like, could he maybe start to regain some fitness, get into full training and be playing football within a couple of weeks? Very possibly. I think there is finally some movement on this issue, which is, of course, bad news if you're a Lascelles owner, but Lascelles owners, I think you've still got a couple of weeks. We probably need to see Botman in full training for at least a week before we expect him to get any minutes. Wilson and Barnes, they are still going to be out, paving the way for the likes of Isak and Gordon to get plenty of minutes, and Longstaff and Willock are out long term. We are talking many weeks before those guys will return. For Nottingham Forest, Awani and Felipe are still out, of course, and Sangare, apparently his illness was quite bad, which could mean that he could still be out for the game week 14 fixture as well. So, yeah, get well soon at Sangare. For Sheffield United, Amadovic. One day I will be able to say this name. I could re-record this one, but I'm going to leave the mistake in there. Amadovic is still is ready. He's going to be coming back into the team, as is McBurney. Both of these players managing to play a few minutes. So, yeah, should be good to start games now. Basham, Brewster, Davies, Jemison, and Norrington Davies, however, are out. For Spurs, Bentancur, unfortunately, is going to be out for months with an injury. Sarr is also going to be out, and apparently that's really, really bad news for Spurs' defensive prospects. I've seen a lot of Spurs fans really concerned. I think this Sarr injury is actually probably quite a big deal for them and might really impact their defensive abilities. But the good news for Spurs is Basuma is going to be back following his suspension. For West Ham, I wish I could tell you something different. I really, really do, but Moyes, I want to pull my hair out because Moyes, super, super frustrating. I think he hates FPL managers. Don't blame him. But yeah, he couldn't give anything remotely useful regarding Bowen. He just kind of said, yeah, Bowen, yeah, he had an injury. Well, we'll have to check with the medical team to see if he's back ready for this game week. So that is completely useless for us. But what we can say is that Bowen hasn't trained. That is information we do know. So Bowen, considering that he hasn't trained and Moyes is kind of not giving us anything, I think at this point, if you are thinking about selling Bowen anyway, that's probably enough information to maybe convince you to just pull the trigger and just deal with that issue, because it sounds like it's going to be a headache and we don't really know what the situation is. It's an annoying one, but particularly with short turnarounds between games, you never know when Bowen is going to be back, which is frustrating. Since he's not been seen training, don't really know what else to say to you guys, but I'll keep my ears to the wall and update you tomorrow to see if there's any movement on that one. Alvarez, Sofal, Kudus. I did want to note this. I'm not too worried about these players personally, but they were missing from the European squad for West Ham, and Moyes did mention that he did leave some players behind because they were ill. So is there some illness in the West Ham camp? Maybe. Is it these particular players who were ill? maybe. I'm not sure. Just wanted to throw that one out there. Don't be too surprised if you have a Sofal or a Kudus and they miss out, because maybe they're ill, but I wouldn't be too worried, but just be aware of it, basically. Antonio is still out as well, of course. And finally, for Wolves, Nori is going to be out for game week 14. Super frustrating, but they are hopeful that he is going to be back for next week. So, yeah, he's going to be left behind this week, maybe back next week, which is, I guess it's okay. You know, you're probably not going to want to play a Nori against Arsenal anyway, and most of you guys don't even own Nori. Lamina and Gomez are suspended, however, so that is possibly going to pave the way for Arsenal to dominate in those midfield positions. Those are the two kind of main midfielders there for Wolves. And Neto, he is on grass in his training, but he is still going to be out. But moving towards a return for Neto, but game week 14 going to be a little bit too soon. So those are the press conferences rounded up. Loads of information to take in there. What are we going to do with this information? What do we want to know about next? Well, let's answer some of those big questions ahead of game week 14. So first of all, best defenders. Lots of people looking at replacing the likes of Matty Cash and many, many others, let's be honest. All of the defenders are letting us down at the moment, and there'll be no surprise to see that the three top defenders, in my opinion, are all Arsenal defenders, the only defence that have been reliable recently. So, first of all, Saliba nailed best defense in the league. You pay it for your peace of mind. Gabriel, a little bit cheaper there at 4.9. He's probably going to be nailed, but you never know with Gabriel. He could miss the occasional game with Kivior coming in, but probably won't happen too often. I think Gabriel is pretty safe at 4.9 million, but not 100%. Zinchenko, I think his game time prospects are improving. However, I think there is going to be some rotation there sometimes. I think Zinchenko is more rotation risk than Gabriel. So I think Gabriel is the better pick than Zinchenko, but I wouldn't blame you totally if you wanted to go Zinchenko as well. He's an okay pick. You know, he is better than most defenders, and he's going to play most games at least. Number 4 here is Tsimikas. Klopp has spoken about him getting a run of games. Maybe Klopp wanted to give him more game time. He's got good fixtures over the next 3 as well. So, yeah, I think Tsimikas is definitely a play we can still be considering. I've got Fabian Schär here. Long-term nailed Newcastle defender. So, you don't need to worry about him getting substituted, yoinked out for Botman in a few weeks. Yeah, 5.2 million is a little expensive, but Newcastle's next 6 fixtures are really quite nice, so I do expect that Newcastle will get some clean sheets over this period of games. And finally, number 6, Ethan Pinnock. He is a great pick, really nice and cheap, good defense. However, only if you're free hitting in game week 18, because I think you could kind of move into some trouble if you did have the likes of Pinnock. In game week 18, when Pinnock blanks, you maybe have Haaland and Mbumo, maybe Alvarez, some other players that blank as well in game week 18. You're going to find yourself in a little bit of trouble, a little bit of danger there. So maybe Pinnock is not going to be for everyone. But if you're free hitting in 18 or planning on doing so, then I think that's absolutely fine to go for that move. Let's talk about some cheap midfielders. If you're planning on removing Bowen or maybe someone else, Eze, if you've got him and he's got his injury, obviously, who are we looking at? Okay, well, first of all, Mbumo. Yeah, no doubt about that. He is by far the best pick for your midfield right now. I think everyone will agree. Just do it. Just do it. Just buy Mbumo. I mean, it's arguably pointless me even talking about the rest of these midfielders because, yeah, just get Mbumo. It's such an obvious pick. He's on penalties, ridiculously good numbers, pretty cheap at 7 million still. And, I mean, look at these fixtures. The next 4 are amazing. I would be happy to remove him again in game week 18 or bench him in game week 18 because he'll do so well in the next 4 that it arguably doesn't matter. And then after that, likely to have a double game week before he disappears off to the to AFCON. So, yeah, Mbumo is definitely the guy. But just for the sake of argument, Gordon and Palmer are pretty close for me. I like both of these players. Both good options to go for right now. Kudus, possibly. Sterling, possibly. Gibbs White, possibly. Not too enthusiastic about some of these other midfielders. It does seem like the options for those cheap midfield slots are drying up a little bit unless you really want to go differential. So Mbumo, Gordon, Palmer seem to be my guys. If you really want to go outside of that, then fair enough, but I'm not massively feeling it, to be honest. Okay, let's talk about forwards, because in my mind, if you're looking to replace Watkins or Alvarez or whoever else, you want a new forward in your team, there is only 2 options outside of Erling Haaland, excluding Watkins, but who knows about that one. But yeah, there's 2 forwards in my mind, and that is going to be Darwin Nunez and Alexander Isak. These are the two guys to go for. And I think both of these players have had their game time and minutes prospects seriously boosted by injuries to their teammates. So with Darwin, we've obviously got Jota out. And with Isak, we've obviously got Wilson out. So both of these players, I'm looking at their stats per 90. Both of them really, really good stats per 90. Really, really good, in fact. Both of them have good fixtures. I think Isak's fixtures longer term are slightly better. But Darwin in the next 3 fixtures, very, very good as well. So Darwin, a really nice short-term option there. And Isak, you know, maybe you can hold him for a little bit longer. Now, both of these players are not completely nailed on, even with the injuries to their teammates, because they have a lot of fixtures, European football, cup football. You know, there is going to be rotation here regardless. And it doesn't matter who's, you know, if they don't have many options, these teams will find a way to rotate these players out their team. They won't be playing 100% of minutes. You know, Cody Gakpo could come in and take some minutes off Darwin. And for Isak, possibly see Gordon playing as the forward role. Not sure. But they won't play all minutes. So particularly this next week, we've got 3 fixtures. Expect these guys to play 2 games. But they are so good that they will get returns during limited minutes, because you can see that these guys, their numbers are brilliant. Now, Isak's numbers are, in my opinion, slightly better, particularly when we're looking at goals. Darwin has a little bit more assist potential, but what we can see from Isak is that although he's not necessarily taken as many shots, he is more clinical. His chances seem to be of higher quality a lot of the time. He is more of a bonus points magnet in that team, and also, Isak is going to be on penalties as well. So there's actually a lot of reason to love Isak, and I don't know if he's got as much love as Darwin in the FPL world recently, but I definitely think both of these players are brilliant. Both of these very worthy of your consideration. It's just going to depend on what you like, what you need in a player. I know a lot of people, for example, don't like picking up players who are injury risk, or, you know, players who get injured often. But what I will say to you guys is that if a player is good enough and they are currently not injured, it doesn't matter if they're likely to get injured soon. That is what your transfers are for. So pick the players you think are going to score the most FPL points and deal with any injuries in the future. That's what I tend to do, and therefore I think I probably am leaning towards Isak out of these 2 players. And I think Isak, you know, longer term, particularly game week 18, Darwin plays against, trying to remind myself in my head, he plays against Arsenal, isn't it? It's Arsenal that Isak plays in game week 18. And then for Newcastle, they have a really, really strong game week 18 against Luton Town. So it might be wise to try and pick up some Newcastle players over the next few game weeks. In that blank game week, it is going to be difficult to get points for a lot of people. I think Isak may be able to provide you more than Darwin in that particular game week. But, you know, rotate these players, take some players in, take them out, mix them about. It doesn't really matter. If you want to move one of these players out after a few weeks, that's also fine. So you don't need to worry too much about long term if you don't want to. But there you go. There are my 2 favourite forwards. I think they're both great. But I'm personally leaning towards Isak at the moment. Couple of differentials for you guys, because why not? So in defence, we've got Lascelles still. If you fancy him for a couple more game weeks, we want to take the risk there. Mikalenko is still going to be an option. It's a nice jumping on point in this Nottingham Forest fixture. And Fabian Schär, if you want to go as something a little bit more secure. In midfield, Morgan Gibbs-White. He seems to be returning into form a little bit there. Probably going to be on penalties for Nottingham Forest as well, so that's going to be good news. Sterling is an interesting differential, and Luis Diaz. You know, we spoke about Darwin being more guaranteed minutes with Jota out, but it might actually be Luis Diaz that benefits from this situation a little bit more. Obviously, you've got a nice fixture against Fulham for Liverpool, so yeah, why not? Could be an interesting differential. For forwards, Semenyo for the cheap guy, Solanke for the medium guy, so Bournemouth players looking like they could do a little bit of business at the moment. We've got Isak as well, who we've spoken about at length already, but I do like him as a differential. Here's your goalkeeper start order. Raya, Flecken, Kelleher. These are the kind of guys you would love to play in goal, ideally. Areola is against Crystal Palace, so I don't think he is too bad this week as well if you are an Areola owner. And aside from that, yeah, just consult the list to decide which kind of goalkeeper you might be looking at playing this game week. But yeah, certainly, I don't think for once, you know, I think there is a small chance of an Areola clean sheet, which I don't say very often. And after this game week, I might not say it very often ever again. But let's see what happens. Okay, game week 14 captains, and this is a huge debate where a lot of people are split. Haaland versus Salah, which one should you pick? 2 guys in form, 2 guys on penalties, lots to love for both of them. It's a really interesting one. Now, I think most people will naturally gravitate towards Salah. Great home numbers. Obviously, he is a long-term favourite among FPL managers. And on paper, this Fulham fixture seems like the better one of the two. However, I'm not sure that is necessarily true. If we look at recent numbers, Spurs have actually been the weaker defence out of Spurs and Fulham. They're both home games. So, yeah, Spurs, they are missing, obviously, a lot of players. You know, we've seen them play full-backs at centre-back. We've seen them play ultra-attacking football, even in games where they're playing against 9 men versus 11 against Chelsea. They still go super attacking, and you feel like a team as good as Man City will punish them for that. So, on paper, although people will probably look at this and say Salah is the better pick, I think Haaland, his prospects are maybe being underrated by a lot of people. And this fixture, I think, is actually a better fixture for Haaland than the Salah fixture is against Fulham. Another thing to note is game state. So often we see that Salah mostly does really well when Liverpool are already ahead or, you know, him scoring penalties. Those are the two main situations where he does tend to get most of his goals. So what we need really is Liverpool to go up early. Now, if it stays 0-0 at half-time or Fulham go up in this game, then Salah, his prospects will get worse and worse as the game goes on. On the other hand, if Fulham, you know, they go down early, Liverpool manage to grab an early goal there, well then Salah's prospects to score more goals get even better. With Haaland, it's kind of the opposite. I think the chances of Haaland scoring in the first minute are just as much of him scoring in the 90th minute, no matter what the game state is. So actually, I think Haaland, you know, he's capable of scoring in any situation, where Salah, you do need certain situations and circumstances to come about for that to come in play. Now, if you're asking me which one to pick, if you can't decide yourself, I am personally leaning towards Haaland. I think he is probably the better of the two captains. That's not to say Salah is a bad captain pick. I think they're both great, and I think it could go either way this week. But I prefer Haaland, and it does seem, from looking around, that a lot of the top FPL managers seem to be preferring Haaland, whereas in the overall player base, it seems a little bit more split between them two. But I think when we kind of see everyone's team after the deadline's passed, I think we will see a lot of the top managers actually going for Haaland as their captain rather than Salah. Don't know what you want to take away from that one, but I'm just putting it out there. Now, one other thing, if you're feeling brave, Darwin Núñez. Now, Fulham actually concede a lot of their chances through the central areas of the pitch rather than from the wide positions. So maybe Darwin could even be a better captain than Salah if you fancy targeting this Fulham at home fixture. Just putting in that one out there. It's risky, but we have seen Darwin rested for the midweek European game, and we know his prospects of game time have really, really improved. So therefore, if you can get 80 minutes out of Darwin against Fulham at home, playing through the middle where they're most susceptible to conceding goals, could it be better than Salah? I don't know. I don't know if it can or not, but yeah, just wanted to put that one out there. I do think Darwin is the only viable captain pick outside of Haaland and Salah, to be honest. So yeah, definitely worth a mention, but it's going to be a tough one, guys. Haaland versus Salah. It's going to be a tight week for that decision. But yeah, for me personally, if you're asking me, Dan, who would you captain? The answer is Haaland. And I just want to wrap things up with some frequently asked questions. These are questions that I've seen a lot in my comment section this week. And let me know if you'd like me to do this kind of thing again. Just try and go through some of the main questions of the week. Because we've not done this kind of segment to the video before. But yeah, I thought we'd try it out today. But yeah, going through these. So Gordon versus Palmer, big debate. I think I slightly prefer Gordon for this game week. But I think as we move forward, Palmer is going to be the better pick. So I think Palmer is probably your long-term pick. Gordon, slightly nicer in the short term. But yeah, it's really up to you. They're both great picks. If I had to bring one into my team this game week, I think Gordon would edge it of these two players, but at the end of the day, if you can go for a Burmo over both of these players, then you probably do that. Son versus Saka. A lot of people talking about selling Son and buying Saka. Really, really disagree with this one. Don't think it's a very good transfer move. I kind of joked on Twitter earlier on in the week that the Son to Saka transfer move is the transfer move for those people who don't actually watch football, because what you probably would have noticed if you are kind of watching a lot of football at the moment is that Saka, he really is getting quite fortunate with some of his goals and assists. It seems to be coming out of nowhere a lot of the time, and maybe there is a skill to that in fairness, but when you kind of look at his FPL returns, or you know, his goal in the Champions League the other day, you think, is this sustainable? Maybe. He's in the right positions. You know, he's trying it occasionally. But, you know, his XG numbers are really poor. His expected assist numbers aren't particularly great either. Son, on the other hand, is kind of the inverse. He's not been getting FPL points over the last 3 game weeks, but he's looked ridiculously dangerous, generating good numbers. Obviously, Son is on penalties, and he hasn't had any penalties somehow as well, which is just crazy, crazy stuff. Disallowed goals ruled out for offside. There's this whole myth going around at the moment that Maddison, without Maddison, Spurs can't create chances. Well, Spurs against Aston Villa in Game Week 13 created the second most chances of any team in the Premier League. Only Bournemouth created more chances against Sheffield United. Not totally surprising. And that is discounting the offside chances as well. And there were many of them against Aston Villa for Spurs. So I think the kind of Spurs being unable to create without Maddison thing is a bit of a myth, to be honest. I don't know if I'd buy into that too much yet. And Son is definitely still going to get fed chances. So if you are thinking about making the Son to Saka move, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But I do advise that you, at minimum, go and watch the highlights of Spurs versus Aston Villa before deciding that Son is suddenly a terrible pick or a terrible player or useless or, you know, not likely to get FPL returns. Because looking towards the future rather than the past, Son's prospects, I think, are better than Saka's. That said, it's probably a case if you have Saka, you stick with him. Probably don't move him to Son. If you have Son, definitely don't move to Saka. Stick with what you got. It's probably what I would say, but I would probably be more likely to move Saka to Son than I would be to move Son to Saka. So maybe that says something. Kelleher, you could think about buying him. If you are worried about your goalkeeper situation right now, you have a spare transfer right now, you think you could get Kelleher in for the next few weeks, and you don't think you'll be wanting any other Liverpool players really, because obviously you can only have 3 Liverpool players. Then yeah, there's definitely an argument for that. He's obviously very, very cheap, so you can just stick him on the bench when you're done with him as well. Yeah, there's definitely an argument to go for Kelleher. Don't mind that. For Trippier, people talking about selling him to free up budget. I'm not really sure I like this. If you really wanted to free up budget, I would say that Watkins would be the player to sell at the moment because of those injury doubts. So yeah, I think Trippier with the good fixtures, you've probably got to stick with him now. I think he'll be rewarding you. Some people asked about starting Charlie Taylor. Hey, if you hate one of your defenders right now, they're really, really frustrating you. Maybe you've got a Matty Cash who's frustrating you or someone else entirely. Then why not start Charlie Taylor? Game against Sheffield United, you've always got a chance of a clean sheet there. But don't expect a clean sheet because no one can expect a clean sheet at all at the moment in FPL. Unless you're Arsenal. And finally, can you go without Mbeumo? I would advise against it. Mbeumo does really look too good to be true. And me, as someone who loves picking different players and going differential, all I can think about is going template with Mbeumo this week because he's just that far ahead of all of the other players in his price range. Now, that said, if you really, really want me to provide you with a counter-argument, maybe some confirmation buys for those of you guys who really don't want to buy Mbeumo already, then I guess I would say, well, he blanks in Game Week 18, so that will cause a problem, and he is going to be off to AFCON from about Game Week 21 onwards. So there is going to be some missing games for Mbeumo. You'll probably have to deal with him or transfer him back out at some point anyway. It's just a case of whether he can get enough points in the short term to make up for that. I personally believe he will, but if you disagree, then that's fair enough. And hey, you never know, Luton could do another defensive masterclass and maybe keep the scoreline low, maybe like they did against Liverpool a couple of weeks ago. But that was a surprise. I wouldn't expect that to happen again, and I wouldn't expect it to happen necessarily against Mbeumo. But hey, look, I'm not saying Mbeumo is an absolute must-buy, but he's close. And there we have it, guys. That is everything rounded up for Game Week 14. Hopefully, we answered all of your questions and big topics. But if you've got any more, please do let me know by leaving a comment down below. And yeah, I'll try and answer some of you guys to give you the best information possible. If you do appreciate these videos, make sure you drop a like. It really does help out the channel and shows me that you do like what I'm putting out there. And do subscribe if you want to see this every single week because that's what we do. We love it. But aside from that, guys, I will be back tomorrow for my deadline stream. Slightly later deadline than usual. But whilst you're waiting for that deadline stream, why not check out another video? There's loads of Game Week 14 content on the channel right now for you to go and check out. But aside from that, guys, thanks so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates.